After the masquerade, the masks come off, using the Unmasking Diary to explore the everyday process of neurodivergent autistic unmasking. Author Natasha Stavros, PhD, speaks with licensed marriage and family therapist Sarah Liebman, diagnosed ADHD with special interest all things neurodiverse. Join us in this episode of Following the Threads as we explore social, psychological, and spiritual frameworks that empower resilience through change. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute counseling, psychotherapy, or mental health services. Listening to this podcast or communicating with the host and guests does not form a therapist-client relationship. The information here is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your own mental health professional with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. Welcome to Following the Threads. I'm Natasha Stavros.
And I'm Sarah Liebman.
Today's episode will be about navigating a recently diagnosed autism, ADHD, or ADHD as a parent who recognizes parts of themselves in their child. But before we dive into it, let's welcome our guest, Tara Neri. Tara is a licensed clinical mental health counselor certified in ADHD and autism spectrum disorder practice, and the creator of Unmasked Parenting. She is an autistic ADHD parent with sensory processing differences and has spent over 2 decades supporting children and families who need more understanding, flexibility, and practical support. Her work blends clinical experience, lived experience, nervous system support, rational repair, and neurodivergent affirming parenting. So welcome, Tara.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we've planned for this a lot, and you are our first guest, and you've done a really great job.
Thank you.
So before we dive into it, in the last few episodes, we talked about my experience getting an adult autism diagnosis and how important social communication and behavioral challenges are stemming from childhood into adulthood. And for me, I went through infertility, pregnancy, an extremely dangerous birthing experience, and severe postpartum symptoms, all while unmedicated from severe depression and anxiety. And getting my autism diagnosis broke a dam of emotions. I was relieved to know that I had something that could help me start making sense of everything that seemed to go wrong. I grieved that I truly believed years of people's projection that I was undeserving and unworthy of acceptance, safety, or trust. I was angry that I had been asked to suffer to accommodate everyone else's comfort before my own. And I was protective. Evidence that they cited as a basis for my diagnosis was a near identical match to the behaviors of my nearly 4-year-old daughter. So I wanted us to talk today about reflection and projection and what the difference between those are. So thinking about reflection, you love them to pieces, and yet you have spent so much of your life in self-loathing for who you are. And now you know why you've been so misunderstood, not just by others, but by yourself. And you feel compassion for the child that you were and for the child that you have. But what do you do? How do you even begin to process that? Tara, do you want to dig in there?
I do. I want to dig in. I'm just processing. Okay. So I think it all starts with, you recognize in your child that you are deserving of, being deeply loved the way that you love your child. And you see, like you said, all these similarities, their sensitivity, their sensory needs, their big feelings, just how they move through the world. And they're not a bad child. That's not in existence. um, uh, and you do not see someone who's undeserving. So, I think it starts with, you know, that painful realization, acknowledging that painful realization that if it's true for them, they're deserving of that love and support and understanding. It was true for us too.
Yeah.
And so I know that's a lot to hold, and it's going to bring up grief. And I know that's very difficult. It's not something that you rush through and jump into with both feet necessarily. It's just I'm trying to find the right words. You just begin processing it through small acts of kindness. As you're learning your child and you're supporting them, how you can, how that looks for yourself. I'll just give one example that I wrote down is I wrote it down somewhere. Okay, so you start noticing what overwhelms them, and then you realize, oh, that overwhelms me too. What might that look like to show myself that support and understanding?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so
And
real for
that's
me right now.
yeah, that's my dig.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it. My daughter is currently she's going through a growth spurt and she's tired and I can just tell she's kind of withdrawing from everything and I feel it. I see her doing it and I feel it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So here you are. You've got the diagnosis, and like Tara said, you're like, what am I going to do with this awareness? At the very least, I'm going to start extending kindness to my child in moments where the autopilot is, stop it, behave yourself. Nobody wants to go to XYZ, but we're going. And so, that piece from our title about what is projection and what is reflection, I was thinking about it in terms of an inner awareness, like like your intra-subjectivity, becoming the subject of your own sort of thoughts and observations, so that when you pause, which is a great suggestion most of us get as parents, it's like, what, pause to like take in a deeper breath to yell louder? Like, what am I supposed to do in that moment? Which is one of the reasons Tara's work is so wonderful. And then the other piece of that is intersubjectivity, where you both start to see the world through your child's eyes, and then you allow them to start seeing the world through your eyes. And by that, I mean, we're in a loud place. We're all struggling. And, kind of an old parenting model is like the parent just gets, more and more uptight, and then the kid's in trouble. But if we're working towards this both intra and intersubjectivity, we might say, it's really loud in here. I don't like it either. Right. And, had an experience like that with one of my kids recently. And I was like, can you just do this? My kids are 15. Can you just do this? Close your ears. And, we've got 5 more minutes. And, in the past, I could have been embarrassed that my child was, not tolerating something. Right. But instead, I was like, oh, yeah, I don't want to tolerate this either. This would drive me bonkers. And we still need to do 5 more minutes of it. So that was moving from like an external force working, like acting upon the child, to more of a internal and connected framework where I imagined myself in both positions, both as the parent who had to make 5 more minutes happen, and as the child who was really at the end of their sensory rope.
Yeah. So this actually leads to the second point that we wanted to talk about, which is, sort of the first point is like, how do you even process that? And the second is, okay, I want to interrupt the cycle. I don't want to treat my child the way that I was treated, where, I was largely gaslit on my experience or how it was for me. And I was sort of forced to comply with something that was exceptionally difficult without any acknowledgement for it. And so I think it would be really great to hear sort of how do you actually interrupt the cycle and stop your story from becoming your child's story. Tara, do you want to dig in?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what Sarah was saying about that piece of, the co regulation and still holding the boundary. while showing that compassion to yourself and the child. And interrupt is a really important word. And Sarah also said pause. And it kind of depends on the person, which one is really going to help you stop. But something that I found myself using a lot is, am I responding or am I reacting?
Yeah.
And interrupting that cycle, I think a lot of it is kind of recognizing why, when you are reacting, kind of asking yourself, like, where is this fear stemming from? What's actually happening here? Am I having a hard time because my child is having a hard time? Is it because I remember what it felt like? Am I reacting to the child in front of me or my younger self? Or like, and I think Sarah had spoke before when we had talked about like the ego and just that, again, like that self, that younger self, of being judged, of being excluded, and reacting to that rather than what is happening right here.
Yeah.
So on the surface we may see frustration, fear, urgency, things like that, and underneath there's that grief and shame and unresolved pain. So to me, interrupting the cycle means not immediately parenting from that first reaction. And if you do, we all do, we come back to that and repair, but pausing and asking, what is underneath this? What belongs to my child and what belongs to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And yeah. And what happens when you don't take that moment, when you don't take the moment to sort of stop parenting from fear?
Well, I think Tara said something really important, which is we all parent from fear, we all react, but learning to repair with your child, like thinking of working through your own sort of beliefs about what it means to acknowledge your big behavior, your scary behavior, whatever it might be, and allowing your child to need the apology and to appreciate it. And so, there's a way that parenting from fear has been kind of the norm. Because if you're afraid, that means you love your child, which is, it seems like inductive reasoning, which doesn't really get you very far. But, when any of us parent from fear, and I see myself in.
And what does that look like? Like parenting from fear? What's an example of that?
Let's see. Boy, I sure know I have a lot of them. Parenting from fear is kind of like the feeling of force, right? Like, you have to do this. Stop it. It's not a big deal. Just, suck it up.
Pressure.
It's just a haircut, or it's just, right? And so
it's just a shirt.
It's just a shirt. Oh God, the shirts and the socks, right? Oy vey.
Yeah, they know better. You know better. Yeah.
Yeah. But when we didn't get a different response, right? There can be those moments where even as we're being intentional and we're learning as many skills as we possibly can, we can find ourselves in a moment. I remember one time being a little forceful, sort of more on the authoritarian, controlling end. And my daughter looked at me and said, "You hurt my feelings." And inside my head, I said, "I'm the parent. I get to hurt your feelings." Luckily, I didn't say that out loud, but it really went around in my head, that kind of fearful response on my part created a situation where, thank goodness, I'd already taught my daughter to talk back to me. But, the other part of the fearful parenting can be doing, kind of just letting whatever happens happen, even if it runs over you as a parent and your sensory needs or your time needs. So it's, what am I afraid of is a very important question. I know.
Yeah, and we may feel pressure to get it exactly right because we know what it feels like to be misunderstood, unsupported, or pushed past our capacity. And Tara has coined a phrase that I have found extremely helpful: regulation first parenting. Can you tell us more about this, Tara?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, regulation first parenting, it started with, um, you know, supporting the parent is going to support the parenting. So, and it started kind of a bit with that phrase of, am I responding or am I reacting? Right. So I think the important piece is not just responding to my child, but is also responding to myself and giving myself that same kind of understanding while still holding myself accountable, like I do my child. So yes, I'd still get overwhelmed. I still react. It doesn't mean I don't ever raise my voice. It means that I practice noticing when it happens, whether it's in the moment. Sometimes I've gotten better at it, right? It takes a lot of practice. And there's times where it doesn't happen right in that moment. but so instead of looking at the child's behavior or our own behavior, it's and how do I stop this? It's again, I love I don't want to use this other person's phrase, but it's kind of like climbing a little higher, or the iceberg is probably the best metaphor I can think of. It's kind of like what you see is above the water, like like swimming underneath.
Yeah.
It can be really scary to go down there, but what's happening in my body, what's happening in my child's body. Are we tired? Are we hungry? So including ourselves in that care. And I think the biggest thing I really want to point out, because I keep hearing Sarah kind of bringing this up as well, is like this is not permissive parenting. This is not my child or gets to do whatever they want to do because they have these particular needs. It means I can say I'm not going to let you hit while understanding that my child's overwhelmed. I can say that calmly. I can say that with confidence. So that's kind of where it's the kind of underlying piece of regulation first parenting.
I love the name of it because I don't have to remember what it's about. It's right there in the name.
Just in case anybody has attention
Deficit stuff
going on.
I mean,
don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast.
Exactly. But what I found really refreshing when I was first, getting acquainted with Tara's work is that, a lot of parenting approaches focus on the child and how you should get them to do the thing you want them to do. And the parent is kind of left out of it. And you could just pretty much have anything going on inside of you and count to 3, or, I don't remember all of the various. Counting is helpful. I did get my daughter out of bed this morning with some counting, but it was very playful. But again, it's like, well, I'm the parent.
Play is great.
And what am I supposed to? Oh, I get to regulate, not just have to regulate my child, right? And that creates this. It's more of that intersubjectivity. We're both subjects in this experience, and obviously, as the parent, sometimes you are much less the subject because the situation has more going on with the kid. But especially when you kind of have a mutual perspective meltdown situation, like all I have to do is I have to regulate myself. Whatever comes beyond that will come if I'm regulated, And so I love the work because it's so specific and helpful and kind of elegant.
Do I get to say why I love it?
Not at all. Just me.
So
please
show over, mic drop.
Yeah.
No, I really love it because for me, it's, monkey see, monkey do. That is how we learn. That is how learning happens, right? And so when I have to regulate first, I am demonstrating to my child that I know it's hard, and I know that you are going to ask for certain accommodations, and sometimes that will happen and sometimes that won't. And I think, Tara, you had a quote, you said something on Substack, and I just thought it was so amazingly profound that you something along the lines of your role is not to prepare your child for a world that will accommodate every one of their needs, but to teach them how to, what was it? To find the resources they need to get the accommodations that they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what's,
to advocate for themselves. Yeah.
and I think that that's what's really beautiful about regulation first parenting is it's saying, no, like, you want to teach your child love. You want to teach them acceptance, safety, trust, getting their needs met. That is all the things you want to teach them. You have to do that to yourself. You have to show them what it is to do it so that they can do it for themselves too. And so that's what I really love about it.
I love that too.
Yay!
Thank you.
We all love it. So I do want to wrap us up.
Well, and, we're supposed to end because Natasha keeps us on time. But
Yes.
But I think that it is so helpful that the regulating out loud in front of your child is one of the things that parenting is so often all internal, and they have no idea what's going on inside of us. So in addition to it being great modeling, like they get a sense of us as not monoliths, you know?
Yeah.
And now you get to speak about your own work.
Yes. Last thing. Yes, I just wanted to, what kind of just sum up what I'm hearing and really what I want for all of us is that permission to be vulnerable and not to know everything. I think like yours, both of you had mentioned how there's this social, structured idea that we as parents are supposed to, I'm trying to find the right word, know all, be all, and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. And that allows our child to learn how to do that as well, while also learning how to advocate and accept ourselves as we are. So I just think that's, I want that so much for all the people in this community.
Yeah.
And because like you said, it's going, we're passing it down. We're handing something different down.
Yeah.
So with that, we do have to wrap up. Just quick reminder that our three things that we covered today were reflection and seeing that and noticing the difference between reflection and projection, interrupting the cycle of parenting from a place of fear, and stepping into practicing regulation first parenting, recognizing that no one needs to be perfect. Subscribe to the podcast to hear next week's episode, kicking off a series on disclosure of your diagnosis. From the casual to the intimate to the necessary. Please like, share, or comment. We look forward to getting to know you.
See you next time.
This episode of Following the Threads is inspired by The Unmasking Diary, snippets from the book After the Masquerade, a memoir by Natasha Stavros. The Unmasking Autism Diary, memoir expert on recognition without projection. Honestly, since I started down this path, I had no idea what cascade of events would take place. I hadn't really thought about how I would process a diagnosis or what it would mean. All I knew is that whatever it meant couldn't be as bad as not knowing. It couldn't be as bad as the guilt and shame I felt for struggling to function like everyone else. Go to work, do my job, eat, sleep, poop, reproduce, buy things, die, and decompose. Getting my diagnosis helped me begin to understand myself better. But as a parent, it feels like there is no room to process. My job is to show up and be present so that my turmoil doesn't pass on to my child. Well, first, let's start by acknowledging how ridiculous a notion that is. Nice in theory, but in practice, daunting. When my child, who is very likely autistic like me, is overwhelmed, so am I. When they scream and cry and are overloaded, I am too. Somehow, I'm supposed to model self-regulation when my primary executive function challenge is emotional regulation? And it's not just emotional regulation that I struggle with, because my emotional dysregulation and inability to pick up or provide socially appropriate nonverbal communications or expectations of social reciprocity has led to some big T traumas in my life. I have learned to survive by dissociating. How am I supposed to teach my likely autistic child emotional regulation when I don't have it myself? And second, how to engage with their emotions? Of note, many people with autism also struggle with alexithymia, and I am one of those people. Alexithymia comes from the Greek root a, for lack of, lexis, meaning words, and thymos, meaning emotions. Alexithymia is the difficulty of connecting words to feelings. For people with autism, the characteristics of alexithymia are most commonly associated with cognitive empathy rather than affective empathy. This means that people with autism very often connect deeply in an empathetic way, but lack the cognitive skills to identify, especially in real time, theirs and others' feelings, to distinguish between feelings and bodily sensations of emotional arousal, to describe their feelings, to identify or communicate facial expressions, or even to identify or remember faces. My therapist asked me how I'm processing everything. Outside of the work shit show that has ensued from a disclosure of my diagnosis, I told her that it's been really hard. I'm so overwhelmed with life and the idea of having to go back to work or find a new job just so that I can pay the bills and keep healthcare for my family. I feel completely and utterly socially exhausted. All I want to do, no, all I can do is write, read, and putz around in the garden or go to yoga. I want to remove all sensory stimuli and retreat into my mind away from the social cognitive load that is breaking me. I mentioned that I've been focused on parallel play, like working on art next to my daughter, gardening, biking, watching TV with her, or reading books together. None of these really require me to connect on a deeper level. The activity is doing the connection. I did acknowledge that I'm not totally dissociated from my role as a parent. I've been leaning into what it looks like to embrace neurodivergent affirming parenting. Just this last weekend, my daughter had a friend over, and they were climbing on the couch. They decided to crawl under the mid-century modern couch, which sits about 6 inches off the ground. My daughter's friend's head got stuck, and she got scared. My daughter started making noise and screaming too. After we separated them and I soothed her friend from her fear and panic, I talked to my daughter. She didn't want to sit next to me. She didn't want to make eye contact. She was in a shame spiral. I told her that she didn't need to sit next to me or look at me, but that she did need to listen. I told her it was okay, that nothing was her fault, that accidents happen, and that when that happens, we need to check in on our friend and make sure that they are okay. She decided to go check on her friend. I listened from outside the door. They began to talk about what happened. Her friend said that she was scared when my daughter made her go under the couch. My daughter swooped to her own defense. My mommy said I didn't do anything wrong. I came in and knelt down with them. That's right. No one did anything wrong. What I think they are saying is that they got scared and they didn't feel very supported in that moment when they were scared. The two girls looked at each other with resolve. They decided to keep playing. Later that evening, my daughter told me that when other kids cry, she feels it in her body. I told her that that's what it feels like to be overwhelmed. Over the next 24 hours, I noticed that she would act out, yelling, whining, or batting at the air in response to me and her father. I told her that I noticed she was doing this when it looked like she felt rushed and didn't have the time to communicate. I suggested that she use the word pause or I need a minute. She suggested the word wait. I was proud of her. In both these incidents, I'm proud of myself for recognizing my own autistic tendencies and offering her an alternate path to shame. This text is a snippet from my next book, After the Masquerade. For early access to the book and other resources, upgrade to a paid subscription via Substack at natashastavros.substack.com. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Following the Threads. I'm Natasha Stavros, co-host and executive producer, here with Sarah Liebman, co-host, Linda Highfield, director, and Noah Smith, audio engineer and composer.